We're going to dive into the pool. What is the most important game on the Huskers schedule?
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. I'm just letting you know I'm coming in hot today. I'm coming in hot, and there's nothing you can do about it. We thank you everydayers for making this content a part of your day, and for sharing that content and putting your comments down in the comment section. We'll throw it to Mark Onweiler and let him tell you all about Built Bar.
Thanks, DP. This episode is brought to you by Built Bars. Now, if you're like me, you're always on the lookout for healthy snacks, things that you can munch on throughout the day without feeling too bad about it. And guys, I found it. It is Built Bars and Built Puffs. Now, these are healthy and they taste amazing. So what makes them so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, not fake chocolate, not artificial chocolate, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like cookies and cream, churro, peanut butter brownie. And now, for the first time, you can get them in the store. You've always been able to go to Built.com and order all the flavors there. Now, just head over to Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can find them in 4-packs over in the pharmacy section. Just get in there, find flavors like cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, coconut puff, right there. Take them over to the checkout, bring them home, eat them on the spot. Don't have to wait, don't have to pay shipping. They're ready for you. Check it out. Built.com/lockedon. Find them for yourselves. Eat them. Try them. Tell us what you think of them. Built.com.
Welcome back, DP here. Locked On Huskers. Again, thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch every single day. Greatly appreciate you everydayers as well. I keep saying that because it is important for you to give that time. You choosing to spend time with this podcast each day matters. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. I'm appreciative. And I appreciate the comments because you've given me some wonderful ideas as well. Through that, we're going to dance with some ideas that were provided and some conversations that I've had. And I even went to some local folks here in Lincoln to ask this question to see if we could get some basic commonality in how we're looking at Nebraska's football schedule. And I've jokingly said locally that I put Nebraska into thirds no matter what. So no matter what the topic, no matter what the narrative or the angle, that 1/3 of Nebraska fans will love everything. 1/3 will be dissatisfied about everything. And then it's that middle third that will determine the narrative, pro or con, positive or negative, or otherwise. Now, the one thing that I've asked several times if there was anything that Nebraska can agree on, all of Nebraska can agree on. That answer is no. We will address that in a podcast coming this week because I'm just telling you, to get 100% support for anything Nebraska is difficult to do. But I went to some local folks and I asked a question based on a conversation that I had on a previous podcast about the most important game of Nebraska's football schedule this upcoming year. And one, we were trying to define what success would be, how it would be identified. We thought that if we broke it down by game, it would give us some level of importance and focus. But what I found out, what I thought was true about Nebraska fans is absolutely true, and that trying to get everybody on the same page is next to impossible. And that's just what being a Husker fan is. There's PTSD involved. There are folks that some are old enough to remember the glory days and are holding on draggingly as the program drags itself forward without that kind of success. There are those that have never known that sort of Nebraska football success. The younger folks who, if you're in your 20s, you may have gotten a year of that sort of goodness, but you have to be 30 to get into the greatness phase. That means you had to be around and old enough to remember it in 1997. And, very few people can speak on that from experience and knowledge. So I asked the question that yesterday what would define success for Nebraska this season? And then going through the games, because the games will determine whether this can be considered a successful experiment. And let's be clear, the Matt Rhule era is an experiment. It is an experiment. In 8 years of promised pay, full disclosure and transparency in the name, image, and likeness vacuum, and in the transfer portal, because this is the first coaching staff that has full awareness of all the things that we're dealing with to create success in a football program. So Matt Rhule has a pretty good idea of what's required and what he's working from, what his limits and boundaries are, and then the things that he does well and the resources that he can use to do so. But when you talk about Nebraska fans, they don't look at any single thing all the same way. That's not how it works. So I tasked a few friends with, okay, tell me what's the most important game on Nebraska's schedule, Nebraska's football schedule. What is the most important game? And I'm going to save my take for the final segment, because I work a certain way, and that's just how that is. But I want to start with look, this is hilarious to me. So let's call him Husker 1. Husker 1 said the most important game on the schedule is, drum roll, are you ready? Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois. Wow. Now, the thinking is that's the first game that you have to win, that you're probably and more likely to be favored substantially. Is there a game that Nebraska will be a bigger favorite in than Northern Illinois? The answer is probably no. I mean, unless we find out in week 5 that there's something magical and there's lightning in a bottle, that afterwards that happens. But most Husker fans, if they sat down and projected, what game will Nebraska be favored and highly favored, largely favored? So the answer from Husker 1 is Northern Illinois. And I went, whoo, wow. Like there's some truth to it. Because that's a game that if it's not won, then the Matt Rhule experiment is on its ear. Like it's sitting head under butt in trouble. No matter what happens in the first 2 games, Nebraska, according to this, the most important thing that Nebraska can do is beat Northern Illinois. Now, I would say that negates or puts less value or focus on games 1 and 2 in Minneapolis and in Boulder, Colorado. But wow. Nebraska fans, if you want to get a real grasp for where the program is, that Husker 1 says the most important game on the schedule is Northern Illinois. Woof. We'll throw it to break. When we come back to Locked On Huskers, we'll go to Husker 2, who will give their insight and intel to what the most important game on Nebraska's schedule is. You have time. Hit pause, put your comments down in the comment section. You can tell us what you think about Husker 1, or you can project what you think Husker 2 will say. And I'm pretty sure Half of you are wrong. I'm DP. We'll be back to Locked On. Hey, gang. Welcome back. Locked On Huskers. Again, thank you for putting your comments down there, for subscribing. If you haven't, take time, hit pause, subscribe, get the content. Greatly appreciate you. We're talking about the most important game on Nebraska's schedule. And again, Husker 1 points out and says, okay, it's Northern Illinois because that's the winnable game. Winnable game. That's the one that should be the thing that you circle as a guarantee. Like if you're doing one of those guaranteed win pools, that Northern Illinois is the one that most people would select. That's from Husker 1. Husker 2 says this, that the most important game on the schedule, and wrap your brain around this for a minute, is Northwestern. And the logic is this. It's post-bye. There's all the hype. You get to see what changes need to be made and get to make them, but you can't get out-coached. Now, oof. I just Northwestern is October 21st. So before Northwestern, Minnesota, Colorado, Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Michigan, Illinois. There's a bye week after Illinois. So 6 games into this thing, we have some idea of the personality of this team. We have some idea. And I'll ask you as well what you think Nebraska's record will be after they go to Minneapolis, after they go to Boulder. Northern Illinois comes here, Louisiana Tech comes here, Michigan comes here, and then they go to Illinois. What do you think the record is heading into bye week? Now, that's the perfect halfway point. And this team could be, if they're 6-0, this show's different. It's a hype show, and we're throwing confetti. I'm like literally just going to be sitting here throwing confetti in the air the entire episode. 5-1. That means that most things were done well. I think the team that everybody would expect would be Michigan. If they're 4-2, everybody's happy. 3-3, we're satisfied. We're okay. We're okay because you probably beat Dion. Right? You beat Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. You beat Dion. You lost to Michigan and you lost to Illinois. And you get a bye week to fix some things. And here comes Northwestern. Now, we know the history. We know the recent history. And we know that Nebraska has to be and should be offended that it's in the conversation of likeness with Northwestern football. It should be offended at itself. It should be ashamed. But Pat Fitzgerald doesn't have any desire to help Nebraska feel good about themselves, and he's pretty rock solid and steady in what he'll bring to the table. But that visit, look, last year's game against Northwestern was the most important. Why? Because it was Northwestern. It was a winnable game. You were on national TV. You got all the hype and all the exposure and all the effect, and you laid an egg. You laid a big, huge, honking egg. So Northwestern could be the most important game because it could set your season at 4-3. It could set your season at 3-4. It can guarantee that you're diving in the pool because, quite frankly, after that, you've got another gauntlet you got to face. Husker 2 says the second most important game, that if Northwestern is number 1, Purdue is the second most important game. Purdue, another first-year head coach. That's a big deal. There's no Purdue fear from Nebraska's program. Not sure that there's Nebraska fear for Purdue, but comparable talent. And, oh, by the way, it's homecoming. At some point, athletic departments are going to reassess homecoming. Because homecoming is for good programs. Homecoming used to be a time of celebration. Homecoming is a joyful time. It's a great get together. It's, hey, look at us. This is who we are. This is what we do. Look how awesome we are. Look at what we built. Look at all the things in play. Except when you're not winning those games, it's not fun, and it's not good, and it affects those paychecks. It affects those donor checks. It affects money in the community. From a business standpoint, Northwestern and Purdue back-to-back is pretty big. 2 weeks at home. Back-to-back after a bye. And it takes you into November. Husker 1 says, drum roll, the second most important game, remember they picked Northern Illinois as game 1. They pick Louisiana Tech. And the thinking is you better beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. From this thinking that you have to beat Northern Illinois, you have to beat Louisiana Tech. And both of those statements are true. Nebraska has to beat Northern Illinois. It has to beat Louisiana Tech. Has to. So neither of them are wrong, but there's very little chance that both of them, you're considering both of them right. That's just how it works. Pretty fascinating, quite frankly. We will get into the rest of the schedule, and I'm going to fly through them because it's pretty interesting. And then to close, I'll give you my pick, the most important game. But I'll save you this. The same team was chosen as the least important game on the schedule. And I'm fascinated by it. We'll talk more. Locked On Huskers when we come back. Oh my goodness, we're gonna fly through this. I knew that when I put this episode together that it was just gonna be a blur, and it was certainly there. Husker 1. We will start with Husker 1, and we'll close this out. Husker 1 had Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, then at Colorado being third most important, Northwestern 4, Purdue 5, Michigan State 6, Illinois 7, Maryland 8, Iowa 9, Minnesota 10. Now, I'll give mine. Wisconsin 11, Michigan 12. I'll respond to that in a second. Husker 2 had Northwestern 1, Purdue number 2, Iowa 3rd. And this comment could be for bowl eligibility. Prove last year's win wasn't a fluke. Beat your rival in year 1. All valid, all good points. Wisconsin 4. Control new coach narrative. There's so much meat and potatoes to the Wisconsin thing. Northern Illinois 5. Prove you don't beat yourself anymore. Wow, we're really at the bottom of the barrel. Oh my goodness. Louisiana Tech, see above. Minnesota 7. So that Minnesota 7 and 10th. I'll give mine in a second. Colorado 8. First non-con game means more for fans than the program. Illinois 9, Maryland 10. Says Maryland is more talented than you, and crossover should be a win at home. Michigan State 11. Who knows? They both have Michigan as the least important game. Saying Wolverine should roll, but if you flip the script from the 2021 game, it could be important in the big picture. I'll close with this because this is what's fascinating me. The coach in me thinks this way. Okay, here we go. That from today until opening day in Minneapolis, every drill, every bit of film study, every workout, everything you put in your body, every choice you make away from the field, getting control of the academics so that you are ahead of the game come August, not playing catch up or just starting. Finding out who your players are, how much depth you have, how strong you are, changing bodies between now and then. Let's be clear as a coach. Minnesota is the most important game on the schedule. It's the only game on the schedule. It's the only one that matters. Everything that you do, every skill you teach is so that you can get a win in Minneapolis against week 1. Colorado doesn't matter until you take on Minnesota. Michigan doesn't matter. Louisiana Tech doesn't matter. Northern Illinois doesn't matter. Iowa, your rival, doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for beating Minnesota and PJ Fleck. Every drill, every rep, every routine is built on beating the Gophers. I know we like to dive in the deep into the pool. Success is built on keeping it simple, stupid. Don't go beyond that. Figure out how to tackle Minnesota, how to scheme Minnesota, how to line up against Minnesota, how to block Minnesota, how to score against Minnesota, how to stop Minnesota. Everything is relying upon beating Minnesota. And by beating Minnesota and putting the focus on beating Minnesota, everybody else becomes more beatable if you handle your business. That's my focus as a coach. Beat Minnesota. Do that first. Man, wish I had more time. But there'll be another episode tomorrow. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Please subscribe, like, share, and go with me on this one. The 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.